Welcome to GovCon Unfiltered, where your journey through the labyrinth of federal contracting begins. I'm Alexa Tsui, your guide and host on this epic adventure. Here, we dive deep into the heart of government contracting, shedding light on the heroic tales of those who navigate its complex terrain. Our mission? To bring you closer to the action, revealing the critical steps, triumphant victories, and occasional pitfalls that our intrepid adventurers face. Your journey into the world of government contracting starts now, and we could not be happier to have you with us. Let's embark on this adventure together. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of GovCon Unfiltered. Our guest is Teresa Moon with Parabilis, and I'm going to have her introduce herself. Thanks for joining us, Teresa.
Thank you, Alexa. This is awesome. I'm so proud and happy that you are having me on. I'm Teresa Moon. I'm Director of Market Strategy for Parabilis. We are a service provider in the GovCon community. We provide lines of credit to federal contractors. So super exciting. And thankfully, we're not talking a ton about finance today. We're going to talk about what we love about GovCon.
I know, right? I was about to say, what a time to be a government contractor, right?
Oh, yeah, man. It is. It's crazy. But hey, change is good. So got to look at everything with a positive attitude, I guess, right?
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. So yeah, let's just jump right into it, I guess. So, a lot of folks see you around because you are one of the most colorful, bright light, beautiful energy people in the entire space. I have to say that. I know that's true. So, a lot of folks know you, and I would love to know if there were things about your past, a pivotal moment that had happened to you when you were young that kind of changed who you are today, but maybe isn't really anywhere that people know.
Yeah, I appreciate this because it's not very often that we get to talk about who we are as people.
Yeah.
We're so accustomed to having conversations like this and talking about who we are professionally. So, you know, a lot of people know about the fact that I, don't come to my position with a lot of professional experience in finance. However, not everyone knows that I was a stay-at-home mom for almost 10 years. And like everyone in life, I grew up cushy, right? Like I grew up, I always said, pampered and paid for. My parents are wonderful. They worked very hard. They provided me with a very easy life. And so I'm very grateful for that. So I was one of those people that really didn't get those true curveballs until I was a lot older. And we're talking like late 30s, pushing 40. And life threw me some curveballs that required me to, after 10 years being at home with my kids, then I needed to get back in the workforce. And I had to juggle not only my personal struggles that I was going through, but I had a huge gap in my resume and battle that against a couple of really bad experiences early on with my first employers that I had, my second go around that I call it. That was a truly humbling experience, to say the least. And I think with that, it's not like I lacked humility while my life was cushy.
Right.
But when I was doing, the career thing, the professional thing, the first time around, I was a lot younger, a lot more brazen, a lot more narrow-minded because my life, revolved around myself. And there's nothing like a good old-fashioned hard lesson to teach you what you don't want. So I think being older, I had a lot more things to lose the second time around. So I was more willing to give things more thought than just, knee-jerk emotional reaction on everything. So, put on my big girl pants and I literally did anything that I had to do and worked harder than I had ever worked in my entire life. And be frank, as honest as possible, it really sucked. And it sucked for a few years because it went from bad to worse, as it does sometimes, right? And in so many ways, I knew that if I stayed the course and learned from the information that I was receiving from the pain, that it had to eventually turn into something good, right? I was listening to, self-help. I said for years, Tony Robbins was my boyfriend and, listening to anything possible to help uplift me. And,
Right.
Something good has got to come from this if I just learn from it. And it's amazing, hindsight being 2020, the sights you see after you climb that mountain and you get a glimpse from 10,000 feet above. It's like, wow, I walked through all of that and I got to the other side. And I think that was the most pivotal point in my life period, not just professional career, because those personal tragedies that I was dealing with while I was trying to get through into a new professional career, I learned so much in such a short period of time. So you couldn't help but you either make it work for you or let it eat you up. It's just, kind of
Right.
the way it goes.
Right. Well, I think that learning these lessons later is sometimes harder than learning them earlier. Like you said, because you're younger, just like you can drink a lot when you're in college. I mean, I know I did. I not everybody, maybe not everybody did that, but I definitely did that. Where I drank too much, and then when you're young, you bounce back. But when you're
Hmm.
older and you're dealing with like a bad employer or a relationship that doesn't go the way you thought it was going to go, one of the things I've learned is to like you can never predict how it's going to go, and sometimes those lessons actually teach you how not to be, like you were saying, right? Did you find that you like built up your, okay, well, this is how I'm not going to be as a leader? Did you
Yeah.
do that?
Absolutely, because I was more cognizant of it. When I was younger and I was dealing with, issues that would arise at work, I think because I was so narrow focused on myself that I didn't let it sink in as much to inform me on, hey, this person isn't, they may have done a great job of finding me. However, they're not a great leader.
Obviously.
You know what I mean? And so it did teach me a lot of, you know, not, we don't get a roadmap or an instruction
Right.
manual on how to do things. And so everyone's kind of learning whatever role they're in if they're new to it. And so I tried to be as humble as possible in return to them, but it was like if I ever have the opportunity to do what you're doing, I'm going to definitely make sure that I do things differently and keep the person front of mind and not the, what's in it for me or, whatever small objective might be in the midst of everything. And so it definitely helped me to be a better person, better people person.
Right. And I feel like as we get older, our idea of what is a leader evolve, and what
Hmm.
is a good leader, maybe not what is a leader, but like what does good look like?
Yeah.
Because when you're young, you're like it's all about results and getting the motivating the people, and then as you get older, you're like, oh, that's like more of what a manager gets paid to do.
Right.
What is it that a leader gets paid to do? Because if you take a look behind you and there's nobody, you're not
Hmm.
a leader, you're just out taking a walk, right?
Right. I mean, I grew up an athlete too. And so, the leader I was a soccer player and I played at high level. I played through in college as well. And if you're a leader on your team, you're inspiring people to be the best that they can whenever they're being called on. And that's what I always take into everything. I'm inspired by people who love to bring the best out in others around them and they recognize their limitations. It's not because they're like, "Oh, you're so much better at this than me." It's more, "You're really great at this, so I want you to handle this for us." And I'm really fortunate to be in an environment like that now, but I've also had people that were like, "She's really great at this, so let's put her in a box so she doesn't get too big for her britches."
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I had a
Mhm.
boss tell me one time, "Hey, I know this is your first leadership experience, but if you can back it up and just be way worse at this, so you can like match your colleagues that are also in leadership positions, that would be really helpful for us." I was like,
Yeah. Ugh.
"What?"
I don't know how I
But
would have reacted to that. I grew up in an environment where my mom was always like, "Don't hide your light under a bushel basket," right? And she's like,
right.
"But also no, people aren't always going to love you because of that. So you're going to have to take the good with the bad, For the most part, people are probably going to think you're great, but there are going to be people
Right.
that are going to be really spiteful about it too." So
Oh,
I roll
haters
with
gonna hate for
it.
sure.
Hmm.
And especially in government contracting, you would not believe it. People are like, "Oh, did you know what people are saying about you behind your back?" First of all, not my business, don't care.
Right.
Second of all, I'm not gonna change the way we show up because you know what? If they don't like it, that's cool. That's on them though, right?
Yeah. Other people's opinions are none of my business. Uh,
Exactly,
Usually when they're
exactly.
and the people who were repeating them, like, were you ever in middle school? I mean, was it fun?
What?
Someone came up to you and go,
What?
"I just wanna let you know there's a party this weekend, and I know you weren't invited, but I was." I
Right?
mean, come on.
Come on now. All right, I love it. So, looking back at your journey, who was the one person that opened an unexpected door for you, and how has that experience influenced how you help others today?
Well, this one's easy because it hits close to home right now. My CEO currently, Bruce Lyman, I've already referenced the fact that I am the forward-facing public spokesperson for a lending company, and I have zero background in finance. I do have a background in government contracting, though. I did for a few years prior to being with Parabilis. I did business development for a few contractors here in Orlando and won a couple of awards in different industries. So I do have a little bit of a background there, but never anything in banking or finance. So when I was introduced to Bruce, he didn't care about any of that. He wanted to know who I am as a person. he's always said that he hired me for the person I am and not for my background, because whatever I lacked in the knowledge of our industry, he could teach me that. But he wasn't going to be able to change the person that I already am. That already
Right.
needed to be good from the start, right? And that had way less to do with, what I had done professionally in the past and just who I am at my core. And so he was looking, and still is, as we grow our team, he's looking for compassion and
Right.
willingness to help people and willingness to learn as much as possible, so that the knowledge that you gain, you can then pass to use to help more people. And so working for someone like that makes it easy to share that same humility with the people that you meet, that you work with, and knowing that surrounding yourself with other good people is what's important. It's not what you can gain from whoever's in front of you. It's what you can
Right.
contribute. And
Right.
I've honestly never had that before. And it was like too good to be true kind of scenario. And I don't question him anymore. I'm close enough with him now that I know him to his core, that this is who he is as a human, but it's very rare. And I think that's the best part of his leadership qualities, that I hope as I move up within our company, that I'm able to share that, because I'm crazy driven, and I'm always motivated. I'm always ready to dive in and rise to the occasion. But the number one thing that's always expected of me, my job, is to be a good person and to help people whenever the opportunity arises. And that is internal to our company and external as well. And so the things that I've been able to cultivate about myself personally have allowed me to excel professionally for us. And that, you don't usually see the convergence of both, right? You get to meet
Right.
really great people while you're working in other roles with other companies, but to
Right.
have someone that's really fostering an environment of, I want you to be the best you, and
Right.
then have everything else fall into place. And I'm going to help you get to whatever level you're trying to achieve professionally. And it's been a win-win, but he's a rare breed. And I hope, if there's one
Right.
thing that I can do to keep that going, is to share what that experience has taught me with
Right.
everyone that we build our team with going forward.
Well, going back to the leadership thing, he sounds like an amazing leader
Hmm.
and like just tremendous. And I think it goes to show that when a company is led by somebody like that, people want to work with you.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? And if people want to work with you, that's so much that says so much more than like, oh, they just found the product or the thing compelling, whatever that is.
Mhm.
People always forget that customers are people, your employees are people. Everybody, it's all a people business. So it sounds like he approaches it from a very people centric way, which I think
Mhm.
probably resonates with not just, I mean, obviously his employees like you, but his customers probably too.
Oh, absolutely. And when I've had people approach me at events, right? And they're like, "Oh, I've been a, Parabilis client for X number of years," or, "Oh, I was a Parabilis client and now I've moved on." And the one thing that is always resonating is the way that Bruce made them feel, and how
Right.
the care that he takes. I mean, he's our CEO. And mind you, he's 30-year Air Force vet, retired colonel. His last post was CIO of Air Force Intelligence. So this is not someone that comes to this in the stereotypical mold of what you would know from those roles. So if all you knew about him was his
Right.
military career, you'd probably think this guy's probably gonna not be anything of the things that I just described, right?
Right.
He's going to
Right.
be very stern and abrasive, and he's none of those things. And he's very compassionate. And so I think that's the side of it that extends to everyone. It's not just a
Right.
him to his family, or, him to other people. And it's funny enough, I have 2 degrees in literature, which he always laughs about. He's like, she's going out and giving presentations on financial planning for government contracting. Yet she, was a literature professor
Right.
before we met her, which is true. But I told him, he said, "What motivates you in life?" And I said, "I love Maya Angelou." And she said, "People won't remember what you say. People won't always remember what you do, but they always remember the way that you made them feel." And
Right.
I've been conscious of something like that since I was a kid. It's definitely a
Right.
gift from God. I'm very in tuned with other people. I'm an empath, so
Right. Right.
I
Right.
I
Right.
read people quick, and I want people to feel a good way when they leave a conversation or an appointment or a meeting with me. And that's always been most important to me. And he hired me right after I said that. And I was like, wow, if I'd known it was that easy, I would have said that first.
Right. Yeah. And interesting enough, we have so much in common, Teresa. I also have a degree in lit. My master's degree is in teaching English, but my bachelor's is in English lit as well. So,
Awesome.
yeah, I find that folks like us, I was just having this conversation with my CEO this morning. Fuzzy and the Techie is a book, and it's about the liberal arts majors and how they really dominate in the tech fields. And you kind of ask yourself, why is that, right? Because we're not classically trained for it. We
Right.
didn't take we didn't take any of the classes on, technology this and learning C++ that. I don't even know, right? But then so many times in our fields, we'll find people like us that are in roles of leadership. And so anyway, that's a whole other conversation, but I really
That's so
appreciate you
funny.
sharing
And
that.
I just wrote that down because you are one of my favorite people for sharing books with me.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. So I just wrote it down so I can read that too. But it's true. I think
Yeah.
my dad told me when I was, trying to decide what I wanted to study, he said, unless you're going to a technical school, go and study what you love and what you think you're going to gain the most from, because you only get to do college once, at least on his dime, right? Like, you want to stay there forever, you're going to pay for it eventually. But he did pay for my undergrad and graduate degrees, and I thank him for it. But he said, study what you're passionate about. And I did. And being well read and learning through experiences like that, some of the best people who are, Tony Robbins, he read a book a day for 10 years. Pretty smart, right? Not to mention my boyfriend again. Hopefully my husband's listening right now. But, it's being well read goes really far. And I think
really far. Yeah. I totally agree with you. I'm so interested in your take on this, and it wasn't one of the questions I had prepped you for. Sorry in advance. GovCon Unfiltered is a thing. There's this new push to do away with university altogether and bring back the schools that are like more focused on the actual jobs that people were going to do, and kind of like to go back because it's there's a whole political thing around it right now, and maybe you saw Palantir announce this morning that they're doing a technical school, and all these different things. So what are your thoughts on, like, what does that look like in the future if they do away with some of the thoughts, like study what strikes your passion, because that's going to make you a passionate individual, right?
I love that, because people who are passionate about what they're doing, they're happier when they're doing it, right? I mean, the high schools here in Florida have already, the public schools have already started incorporating different tracks, technical tracks. So you can apply to go to a specific high school that is within a track that you're passionate about. So like the high school that my oldest goes to has a couple of different ones. I think they do emergency services, and then they have something else, some other technical school. The high school that I grew up going to, that's not far from here, they have a bank. They have actual credit union within it. So if you're interested in finance, that's the high school that you would want to go to. So I think the importance of introducing it early on, I think, is great, because you're giving them options, right? Because I started off my career as a teacher. I taught at UCF for 2 years postgraduate school, and realized that if I stayed there, that I'd have to live with my parents for the rest of my life, because I was never going to make enough money to support myself. Because the other faculty in my department were very young, and I would have to wait for one of them to die to get a tenure position. So that wasn't going to happen. So I did what I swore I would never do, and I worked, but I was able to do it at my alma mater. And what I learned then, so I graduated from graduate school in 2004. So this was, beginning of the 21st century, right? So we're looking at 2005 to 2008, I was a teacher. And it was an affluent area. So a lot of those kids knew that they had access to college, whether it was community college first or university. But there was a lot more that were already working and weren't going to be afforded the opportunity to do anything post high school diploma, right? Because of the money factor in it. And so if they had been exposed earlier on that technical schools weren't a negative, then they may have been leaning towards it, because you can get grants and loans to go to a technical college equally as much as you can to go to a four-year university. And, I've even had a conversation with my daughter on the way to school. I'm like, why wouldn't you look into being like a plumber or electrician? They make a lot of money. She's like, I'm not going to clean toilets. And I was like, they don't actually clean the toilet. That's a maid. The plumber,
it's a totally different job.
Toilet.
Exactly. And by the way, the folks that work in cleaning services make a lot of money too.
Yeah, you can get government contracts for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think what I'm hearing from you is there's a world where both are important,
Yeah.
right? The technical schools, getting it in schools earlier, and then
Hmm.
also not forgetting there's that whole humanities, liberal arts kind of like education that's also important. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right.
But it always made me laugh when my friends that were also, from very affluent homes and, went to private colleges and got teaching degrees. I was like, you could have stayed home and gotten a, smaller payments plan and gotten that teaching degree.
Right. Well, having been a teacher, I think we need them all.
We need to pay them more. I
We
would
need to
still be
pay them more.
hired. I literally stopped teaching. I loved it. I stopped teaching
Yeah,
because it wasn't feasible for me to build the life economically that I wanted for myself by doing it. And it breaks my heart. That was the driving factor,
man.
but it's the truth.
I hear that a lot, even from a lot of folks who pivoted from being a teacher into GovCon. I mean, that's a whole thing. There's a whole bunch of them. And I hear that over and over. And not just that, but also there's like a lot of things that go into it too, where, you work a lot of hours
Yeah.
and you don't get paid like even for a fraction of it.
Yeah. I mean, I would go to meetings after school and it became a running joke. They'd be like, we need someone to do, extra tutoring hours after school. And I would raise my hand. I go, do you get paid for it? And they'd be like,
Yeah, right.
no. So then they'd ask another question. And I'd go to raise my hand. They're like, you don't get paid for it. And I was like, well, then why are you even asking? Because I'm not going to do it unless you pay me to
Right.
do it.
Right. That makes sense. Well, what do you think is a common misconception about making money in the government contracting space? There's a lot of misconceptions, by the way. I should have a whole podcast around just
Good.
misconceptions,
Yeah.
the whole thing. But what are some that you think that you'd love to debunk for our listeners?
Well, like you said, there's so many, but I think the biggest one that I see most often, especially coming from an assistant's point of view from our industry, is that the biggest misconception is that it's easy. Because if
Right.
it was, everyone would be doing it, right? In my early days at Parabilis, I literally took every call, anyone that wanted to talk to me or would talk to me or, had a business that was willing to chat with me. I took that call so I could learn as much as possible about as many industries that support the federal government so that I could learn how what we do could help them.
Right.
And what I was finding during that is that a lot of them were newer and growing, and they recognized the fact that the federal government literally buys every single thing you can think of.
Right.
So I think there are a lot of people who think because you literally can provide any service or any product or good and find someone in the federal government that'll buy it, that means that you're going to make money doing that. And doing business with the federal government is so different than working in the commercial market. And the learning curve there usually creates such a humongous gap between when you get started to turning a profit. And so you see so many businesses that go years without turning a profit. And before they
Right.
figure out the fact that there's something that I don't know from here to here, and I haven't figured it out, and I'm working for free, and I'm working another job so that I can pay my bills because I'm going to make money doing this, but I'm not right now. And
Right.
I think a lot of it is, two things. Most business owners are functional operators. They don't actually know a lot about how to run a business. So then you couple
Right.
that with knowing nothing about how to do business with the federal government. If they would have weighed out what the likelihood of them would be to not only getting up and moving and recognizable enough to win a contract, but then
Right.
be able to manage all the eggs that go into that basket in terms of pricing and strategy. And, your contract backlog is good, but if you're releasing out as many as you're putting in, you're breaking even. You're not doing well. Like there's nothing good about that strategy. And so I
Right.
think people figure things like that out so late in the game. And they think that
Right.
what they don't recognize is the winning the contract side of it is really the easiest part of it. It's all the
Right.
stuff around it with
Right.
being able to sustain it once you get it and then grow from there. Yeah, it is a lucrative industry, but it's very difficult to navigate successfully without the right help. And if you're not
Right.
willing to recognize that you could potentially be the single point of failure for your business, then you fail, without even realizing it because you think, oh, I've got it. And what I
Right.
do, nobody else can do. And it's just not the case. And so,
Right. Well, one of the things that you mentioned is near and dear to my heart. And if anybody will listen to me, I talk about this a lot. And that is people that start businesses that don't have business degrees. Look, if you've run a business before, if you've helped run a business, cool, then you know what a P&L is. You know how to hire people, you know how to retain people, you know, like, how do you approach a conversation when somebody wants to leave and they're your key personnel on a contract? What is a stay interview, right? Like, or even things like, what's the difference between BD and capture, right? Like,
Right.
there's so many things, like, if you're like a delivery person,
Mhm.
like you're a PM, and you're like, "You know what we should do? I should start my own government contracting company because 'cause I'm so good at this."
Right.
It's it's like a bodybuilder who won a competition being like, "I should become a personal trainer because I am so good at this."
Hmm.
The day, literally, you need degrees in this. This is a profession to own a
Hmm.
business. And so, like, my boyfriend and I go around and around about this quite a bit because I'm so committed to the fact that there are business ethics. If you haven't taken that class, you don't know what those are.
Yeah.
So you just out willy-nilly, no pants dance strategy trying to build a company, and you see it in GovCon all the time.
Yeah. It's, well, it's because it's the world that we live in, right? And we see it, and there is so much money to be had, but
Right,
it's so hard for people for them to recognize what they don't know and then take
right.
that information and have it inform them into, maybe you should build a team around you that knows how to run a business since you're
Maybe.
still passionate about having this. And so, I
Right.
mean, it's part of what differentiates us in our industry is that we provide end-to-end business counsel for that very purpose, because the
Wow.
majority, if not all of the companies that we service, their number one issue is that the business owner is really great at the proficiencies that the company provides, but really not great at running the business. And
Right,
it's an epidemic when it comes to that type of relationship from owner to business. And I
right,
mean, we're fortunate enough to have a lot of people who have built the company who have firsthand experience of what that looks like, because
right.
they may have participated in that to a certain extent. And so we help people through that, but it isn't easy to admit that to yourself. And I think business owners are courageous, right? Because they're taking
Right.
a leap of faith to go out on their own. So there's a certain level of ego that won't allow them to see that they're not as great at being a business owner as they think that they are, I think.
Right, right, yep, these are common foibles in the
Yes.
GovCon space.
Correct.
So, I appreciate that perspective, and thank you for sharing that, but when it comes to, like, how you feel about your network, what has been, your most effective approach for building connections and turning them into mutually, like, meaningful relationships? And this is something I have to say, this is a superpower for you. You're
Thank you.
so good at this. And even as somebody who people think I'm good at it, I'm like,
You are.
I think no. I'm like, "You are the queen at this." So I'm very interested to hear your answer to this.
Well, I appreciate the question. And I think it harkens back to a lot of the stuff that we've always talked about. I'm a people person. I'm an empath. And I gain genuine satisfaction from going out of my way to help people. And the best way that I can do that is by, when I'm meeting someone, is getting to know them and connecting with them and asking them, you know, what is it that you do and what is it that you need help with? Because that's how I build relationships with my network in its entirety. I mean, I'm a mom, so I'm used to, in my life, putting other people first. So it's not something that I'm unfamiliar with or uncomfortable with. And so I lead with that mentality in my professional life too, because it serves my benefit, because I like helping people and I like going out of my way to do the right thing in every situation. I'm not perfect, and more often than not, trust me. My family is not here to attest to that, but they'd be the first ones to run in and be like, "She is crazy." But I think if you really are genuine about getting to know people, and I think you and I even have talked about this before, those people who you meet at a networking event and they're looking over
Yep.
your shoulder so they can make sure that they have their eyes on the next person that they want to talk to.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I was like that at one when I was younger and in sales, because
Yeah.
it was very transactional, right? So I needed to
Right.
meet everyone. And I'm so glad that I don't have to do that anymore. I can genuinely connect with people. I always say, give me enough information about your business to make me dangerous, so that if I'm talking to someone, I
Right.
be able to remember that what you do and who you are, so I can make that connection. And I do that all day long. And
Right.
I have a memory like an elephant. I always say, I'm a mom and I'm an ex-wife. I remember everything that you tell me.
Exactly.
What situation?
FBI agent.
Yes. And I have very good forensic investigative qualities as well. So I know how to find out information on you as well after the fact. But I remember details about people. It's just something that I've had since I was a kid. I don't always remember people's names, but I always remember their face, right? And I remember
Right.
details about them to connect with them. And so you either have that or you don't. And because I have it, I lean into it. So
Right.
it makes me comfortable professionally because now I walk into a room and it's a room full of friends because
Right.
they know that I'm not just in it for myself, that I'm not looking
Right.
what I can gain from them, that they know genuinely that I don't want to have a conversation with everyone.
Right.
Like
Right.
I do have standards. Yeah, I'm just joking. But it doesn't take any time or it doesn't take anything away from me to have a
Right.
few minutes, be kind to someone because
Yeah.
it absolutely comes back. I mean, karma
Yeah.
is real, and the more good stuff that I can put out there that might come back to me when I need it, if it's because I've done something to help
Right.
someone, and I get paid to do it, and that's the beautiful part of it too. I am a professional connector.
Right. Yeah. I think I'm probably a professional connector too. And one thing I notice you're really good at that I want to be more like you is inclusivity. Like you'll notice if you go to these events, a lot of the people, especially if they're more operators than like beauty capture people, they're like nervous, they're introverted, they're shy, and they're kind of like sitting on the edges, but they're not engaging,
Mhm.
And so I think like how do you walk up to somebody that looks like they're not engaging or feeling comfortable and help them feel comfortable. That's like our people like you and me that are empaths and we're outgoing. That's our role in life,
Yeah.
right?
I don't like it when people show up somewhere and don't get out of it what they had intended. And I remember
Right.
in the early days going to events alone where I didn't know anyone and
Right.
literally having to strike up a conversation with a total stranger. And it's like, I'm not going to have a sales conversation. It was always my thing. So where are you guys from? And then they
Right.
tell me, I'd be like, well, I'm from Orlando. And so
Right.
do I win the contest of who traveled the furthest? I still even say it sometimes. Or, I flew all the way in and boy, are my arms tired. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so easy to connect with people. And then you figure out, okay, this person's
Right.
genuinely not interested in talking to me, or
Right.
I've just made their day and we had a laugh, and you take the good for the good from it. But I think,
Right.
I like helping people, and you can't to have a trusted network, you have to know enough about people to say, I think you should talk to this person because I know
Right.
them and I trust them. And you have to get to know people in order to trust them. And so
Right.
you either can do that or not. And a lot of people are closed-minded about it. A lot of people show up at events because it's what's in it for them. And
Yeah.
they're probably the ones that get the least out of it too. So I'd rather be
Right.
me.
Agreed. So if you could go back to your younger self and, when you were first starting out, probably in the second phase, right? Or
Mhm.
just kind of jumping back into the workforce after your 10-year having children hiatus.
Hiatus,
What would
yeah.
be hiatus? What advice would you give yourself about balancing competition and collaboration? Because this space, it's like the frenemy is Olympics.
Oh, yeah. And I grew up an athlete. I already said that. And I played at a very high level in several sports. So to say that I was and am still competitive is an understatement. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong. Competition is great, right?
Right.
But it's how you direct it. So what sports taught me better than anything else is it was more about doing the very best that I could do and continuing to
Right.
improve on my own skills and performance rather than in comparison to someone else. And so, don't get me wrong. I always wanted to win, and I still do, actually. My kids know that I even joke that the name of the game is always I win. But the perspective that I've gotten as I've gotten older and
Right.
wiser, if you will, is that striving to be the best that I can be, the best version of Teresa, and always improve on my last effort, that there's way more joy in that.
Right.
Because if you're comparing yourself to other people, you're going to find flaws. Where if you're comparing yourself to yourself, you're looking for ways to improve because it's progress, not perfection. And when I was a
Right.
kid, I wanted to be perfect and I always fell short. And so because of that, it caused a lot of grief on towards myself. So my
Right.
self-talk was really negative when I was younger because I was searching for perfection and not the progress that can be found in between. And
Right.
and you know, I didn't always feel when I was just starting out that, perfection wasn't still the option. But it's funny when life kicks you really hard, really low, lower than you ever thought possible, it's amazing how your perception changes.
Right.
I had this saying that I saw somewhere once that, everyone falls, but if you fall, make sure you land on your back, because if you can look up, you can stand up. And
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
like that.
that makes sense, and
Right.
it's amazing how your perception changes when you have the opportunity to see it from a, crappy perspective and you want to go somewhere else. And progress rather than perfection made better sense then, because it was easier to achieve. My life already
Right.
was like really hard, and I was going to make it harder for myself if I was so focused on perfection. And so,
Right.
unfortunately, people's greatest teachers, mine included, have been learning from bad experiences. And
Right.
comparing myself to others absolutely never benefited me.
Right.
But competing with who I was yesterday to be better
Right.
today, that's
Right.
where I found fulfillment. And I try to do that every day. I fail every single day in some aspect of it, but it teaches me something. It's like,
Right.
yesterday you said that you weren't going to freak out over something stupid, and you did it
Here we
again
are.
today. And it's like, but yesterday, when I freaked out over something stupid, I didn't recognize it afterwards.
Right.
Today I did. So maybe tomorrow,
Maybe
maybe I won't, but it's progress, not perfection.
Right, right, right. Well, I'm here to tell you that perfection isn't very much fun. And I am always leaning towards, like Pitbull says, we're here for a good time. We're not here for a long time.
Mhm.
So,
I love
however
that.
we can incorporate that into our lives. And Teresa, I'm looking forward to seeing you hopefully at Vets 25.
Absolutely. You're coming to my hometown. I wouldn't miss it. I'm so
Yes,
glad that
ma'am.
they bring the whole crew down here for it, because it's a great event. They do better every year. So
Oh, yeah.
I hope that your listeners, if they aren't already signed up, come down to Orlando. You won't be disappointed.
Absolutely. It's going to be huge. And if the way that I'm looking at it is there's so many conferences that are collapsing.
Uh-huh.
This one actually is growing. So
Yes.
I think it's going to become the small business conference of the entire year. Probably in 2026, we're going to see that. So I'm really, and by the way, he's moving it to New Orleans next year.
Oh, wow.
So that'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, we've gone there a couple of years with the National A-Day Association, and
Oh, yeah.
it never proves to be anything less than really fun. You were there this year with us too. So
Yeah.
New Orleans doesn't suck. That's for sure. But
That's for sure.
I'm partial to Orlando, of course.
Well, Teresa, thank you so much for your time today. And, catch us next time on GovCon Unfiltered.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. This has been fun.